Why does a majority of Reddit hate landlords? I live in a 2-bedroom apartment since 2012 and pay $1,200. Earlier this year someone left a 1-bedroom where I live and I found out the landlord jacked up the price from $1,400 to $1,800. The second I leave he's definitely setting mine at nearly an extra grand. It's crazy to think someone is paying more than what I am for a lot less in the same building. Small. Good. Landlords don't bother me. If Granny dies and they decide to rent out her house, fine. If they upgrade homes and decide to rent out their starter home, fine. As long as they aren't slum lords, no issue. Not everyone can or should buy a house. Slum lords and corporations all suck. Buying up all available property for profit sucks. Because there is a huge shortage of affordable housing in this country and landlords are hogging a lot of these houses for profit while regular people struggle to find somewhere to live. Edit. By this country I meant the UK. I've just realized I'm not on Ask UK. Because it's easier for landlords to buy a house. Because they have other assets to put up. So the sellers' banks are more confident that their offer gets accepted. The only houses I can afford are not even good enough for the low-income housing projects in my city. They won't touch them. And I have had accepted offers get turned away because the house was in too bad of a condition. And it is that way because a landlord rented it and never maintained it, now wants to sell because of the market is nice and it needs massive work done. The reason for the hate is that many are leeches on society. They eat up the affordable housing and then charge people more than the cost of housing to live there. The ones that do what is your solution? Prohibit corporate ownership of houses. You could also tax non-primary homes at a much higher rate. A person or family owning a rental property or two, what is the issue? That's not really the issue. The issue is large corporations buying up tons of real estate. They go in and outbid normal homebuyers just to monopolize the market. Now people who could otherwise afford a home are forced to rent. Where are you supposed to live if you aren't ready to buy a home and can't stay with family? An apartment? There are different types of landlords. You're in their home, renting a room? They tend to be overbearing about your life. You're in their second house? They do the bare minimum for you while you're paying their mortgage. It's a company? Stringent rules, including, for me recently, for them to break a lease they owe you 60 days notice. For me to break my lease and I gave 60 days notice, I had to pay 2 months rent penalty. Even though they rented my unit outright after I departed. They often can make you pay first, last, and deposit to move in as well. In tighter markets. The main thing, though, is that they all raise the rent annually without anything changing in the unit you're renting. Property taxes might increase by about $20 per mo, but your rent increases at $180 per mo when you renew, as an example. Meanwhile, they are doing little tonneau work to receive your rent each month. Because their pricing is insane for the value of what's being offered. I spend $1,000 a month and pay my own utilities to live in a 900 square feet apartment with cockroaches, rats, and drafty windows. Our bathroom ceiling keeps leaking and our landlord keeps replacing the soggy tiles rather than calling a plumber to find out where the water is coming from. When we first moved in, there were so many half-assed floorboard repairs that we had to go through with a hammer and fix all the nails sticking up so we didn't get tetanus. This apartment is probably worth $300 a month max. But we have no other affordable options at the moment. So we're forced to either bite the bullet or live out of our car. Well, I think a lot of Redditors hate landlords because it's becoming more common in the US. where a majority of Redditors come from. To dislike landlords. I hate landlords because they do not provide housing. They hold housing hostage from people who need it. There are more empty homes than there are people who need them. And it is currently impossible anywhere in the country to rent a house if you are a minimum wage worker. I think the solution is obvious. We need to have collectively owned homes by individuals, distributed through local services such as a land bank or a local government. I would also say that not everyone needs to or ought to buy a home, and that people who do not wish to or cannot should live in said previously mentioned collectively owned buildings, preferably mid-rise apartment buildings. A person or family owning a rental or two is an issue because they contribute to the issues with larger corporate landlords renting properties. Firstly, they will tend to increase prices in accordance to rental prices in the surrounding areas, to increase the amount of profit that they make. Secondly, there is an unequal relationship between renters and rentees, as nearly no municipalities or states in the U.S. have systems in place to ensure that renters do not abuse rentees. For more info, look up the Good Cause Eviction movement. Finally, as was previously mentioned, they're not providing housing. They're purchasing housing and then ransoming it back to people for a profit. Profiting of the labor of other people in a form of parasitism. Especially with many smaller landlords buying properties on a mortgage, which their renters do not have the financial ability to do. Why should they be able to ransom housing because chance has caused them to be richer? Most landlords today are corporations. This is very, very bad. The worst landlords are the most prolific, so a lot of people have awful experiences with them. Mom and pop landlord here, i.e. never had more than 2 rental properties, units simultaneously. Only have 1 at the moment, etc. I've noticed there's a lot of frustration towards landlords of all stripes, against people like me, and the corporate and larger investor types. Most of the commentary, if not the intensity of the commentary, appears to be directed at the former. The problem with landlords is the condition in which they reside. Just like billionaires don't make sense when we have widespread infrastructure failure or gaps, underfunded schools, lack of public transportation options, and no universal health care. It doesn't make sense to incentivize the existence of landlords when we have issues with homelessness and low occupancy in housing in the aggregate. Yes, you read me right. My practice as a landlord is not something I wish to continue. And I don't consider myself fortunate, as so much I have a limited set of options, and life in the US is a more race against financial desperation than it is a journey towards freedom and a good life. Landlording should be more rare because we have more affordable housing. Personally, I'd like to see Singaporean-style affordable housing in the US. I'd also like to feel like I have to be a landlord to have a chance to simply not die because I don't have enough money or assets. The system pits us up against each other and it's disgusting. Cooperation, collaboration, competition, zero-sum in almost all things that impact humans and society at scale. If someone is self-employed and they are bad at their job, they won't get clients. If someone is a worker and bad at their job, they won't have this job for too long. But if someone owns property they don't need, it doesn't matter how bad of a landlord one is. There will always be people desperate enough to take that rental agreement. I like my landlord. I've been renting from him for 3 years and have not experienced in random walkthroughs. And every problem I've had has been addressed. I feel like Reddit hating landlords is one of those things where 10,000 of them will be doing an excellent job, but you'll only hear about the one terrible one. I've rented from 3 landlords in the past who I have no grievances with. And I'm on 4 for 4 without a nightmare landlord. Why should landlords own the property they are profiting off while others are unhoused? Do you think people deserve to be homeless while some have multiple homes? Because their job is to be a literal parasite. The entire premise is based on buying up housing and holding it for ransom against someone who needs it, then charging more than it's worth to boot. Every landlord does this. If we didn't have landlords, the price of housing would not balloon to this level. It creates an artificial demand, raising the prices when wealthy people buy houses they don't intend to live in. It is one of the main reasons people who want houses can't afford them, so that is not a justification for doing it. In general, if something would break society if everyone did it, then it is immoral or unethical. If everyone cut in line, you would have a crowd of people shoving their way to the entrance. If everyone owned rental properties, there would be no one to live in them. See China with entire empty cities. If you think you should be the exception to one of these concepts, you're an elitist. Same reason we don't like phone companies or cable companies or insurance companies. If you are taking a significant amount of my money each month, I'm probably not a fan of you, even if you provide a meaningful service. It's just human nature. The system is unfair. If it were fair and the landlords were fair, then there would be no hate. I don't think anyone has an issue with renting itself. I think it's a struggle for the average person to clearly be able to see issues, loopholes, gaps in a system which can be easily fixed but aren't. Some ideas. Housing should be recognized and enforced as a basic human right. Limit the number of properties any person can buy. No one should have more than 2 houses. There's no need. Your family is safe and you have an extra as a holiday home, perhaps, or you can rent that one out. Your choice. No corporations may own residential housing. Owning properties and renting them out should not be a way of earning money. That's it. End of. Housing stock for rent should be completely owned and operated by the government. The government is supposed to be there for the people and not to make a profit from them. Rented properties should have to do longer term lets, like 5 years at least. And tenants should be able to change wall colors, hang pictures, etc. like it's their actual home. If they could do longer lets, that would be great. Some people don't want to buy a house but are currently being forced into it, as it's the only way to get a bit of safety that you won't get thrown out. People need to be able to view their rented property as home. Limit the percent rent can be increased each year. I think you also have to think about just how important having a home and feeling safe is for humans. Is the current system designed with that value in mind? No. The current system robs people of that for their whole lives. And most landlords are complicit in that, as are the government and the estate agents, and there's no reason why we can't have a healthy renting system. The design is wrong and needs changing. It can be made better, but greed is currently running the show. How can I afford rent but don't have the chance to buy the house for a similar payment? The situation is a constant reminder of the current lack of economic mobility. I don't hate my landlady, but I've come to increasingly dislike her. Part of the reason is that over time, she has come to talk to my husband and me as if she were our boss and not people who were paying her money to occupy part of her property. We are in an in-law unit next door to her larger home. Several weeks ago, she let a friend of hers keep her dog in her backyard, which is parallel to our front door and within 1,520 feet of it, even though she knew the dog was going to be distressed and bark a lot. She emailed me telling me that I would be okay with this because my husband, who is a therapist doing telehealth, worked in the bedroom on the other side of our 700 square foot house. She didn't ask if it was okay. And she knew I spent 10 months with a neighbor on the other side with 3 dogs that barked for 12 hours a day and had misophonia as a result. She just told me this would be fine with me and gave me no choice. I should note that we are excellent tenants. I always pay my rent 10 days early. How was that repaid? 1 month. I didn't notice it was the 20th, but wasn't worried because I was still way ahead of scheduled payment. She emailed me later on the 20th and told me she now budgeted based on our early payment and needed to know if I wasn't going to pay like clockwork on that date anymore. She is not entitled to early payment. I was just being diligent and giving myself a buffer in case I forgot to make sure I wasn't late. Now, she feels entitled to that, which is ridiculous. We are quiet, clean, and patient about repairs. How has that patience been returned? She has increasingly taken longer and ignored more repair requests. Last May, I let her know that our kitchen faucet was constantly dripping and nothing was done. In September, I let her know it was getting worse and dripping more water more rapidly. The sound of it is maddening, of course, but she suggested I just collect that water in a bucket so it didn't go to waste. On top of that, she has started to increasingly complain about tiny things or to invent problems which are not our fault. Someone ran over a sprinkler at the far edge of her property. It is literally 2 inches from the driveway and people visit her, including her ex-husband, and drive up to her doorway, blocking the path to our car. No less. So we can't get out when her visitors do this. I gave away a portable swamp cooler and she wrote me a terse letter saying those visitors ran over her sprinkler, even though she checked it after they left and said she saw no damage to it. She insists anyone who visits us not use the driveway. Yet her visitors continue to drive up to her door. This is my first time renting from someone who lives on the same property or close by. And part of what has increasingly happened is she treats us like fleas on her back and satellites of her wants. She expects us to live 100% the way she feels we should live and doesn't want us to have any autonomy if she imagines a problem might develop for her. This includes not giving water to the deer during drought. They have visited every year since we moved here 7 years ago. Or giving cat treats to a neighbor's cat because she thinks I'm leaving food out that attracts skunks and raccoons. Even though the cat eats everything and nothing is left out and those animals have always been around here. She didn't like this year that I put out a self-service Halloween candy table for kids because when it ran out, she said they rang her doorbell, which I don't believe is true since her lights were off. She also complained bitterly a few years ago because UPS kept mistakenly leaving our packages in front of her house. We have the same address as her. Ours just has an A added to the end of the house number. It's an easy mistake to make. I explained it to UPS, but the delivery people keep changing. We retrieve the packages promptly, but she is just upset we get things at all, especially around Christmas. She has also increasingly encroached into our area of the property, putting her trash can on it instead of her own larger space, leaving a wheelbarrow next to our car. I think the main issue is that landlords take your money then treat you like you're invading their space. Every year, I thank her for letting us live here and give her Christmas gifts. Early on in the pandemic, I gave her masks when no one could get their hands on any. We've been really good to her, but she just keeps getting grumpier over time. We're moving and buying our own house next year, and I can't wait to not have to be treated the way we're being treated. And if you think this is about age, I'm 58, my husband is 60, and she is 63, so it's not a young, old issue.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.